The evening light in Fairhope, Alabama, falls gentle, honey, like a lullaby sung soft at dusk. I'm sitting on my front porch, this old rocking chair creaking under me. A glass of jasmine tea cool in my hand. The air's thick with the scent of magnolia blossoms. And out in the yard, that big sycamore tree my daddy planted catches the last rays, its leaves glowing gold like a promise kept. Across town, up in Bayview Estates, my boy Ben and his fiancée, Audrey, are living their polished life, their house all sleek glass and sharp edges. But here, on Magnolia Avenue, my red brick cottage holds me close, its walls humming with stories of love and loss. I'm Charlotte Hayes Lottie to anyone who's tasted my pecan pie and at 65. I've learned that the truth you hold tightest can set you free when the time's right. This is the story of how I stood in their glass house and broke a secret wide open. Darling. And it's a tale worth telling. It was just last night, in the heart of April, when I found myself in Ben and Audrey's dining room, a place as cold as a Mobile Bay breeze. The glass table sparkled under crystal lights, set with fancy china that didn't know the weight of a family's laughter. My pecan pie sat there, humble in its tin, a piece of my heart offered up to folks who didn't seem to want it. Ben stood by the window, his suit crisp, his eyes flicking to Audrey like she held all the answers. Audrey, all blonde hair and sharp heels, poured champagne into flutes delicate as eggshells, her smile as practiced as her Bayview Estates decor. I stood there, honey, in my blue silk dress, my mama's pearl pendant warm against my skin, clutching an envelope that held 40 years of truth. We'd barely sat down when Audrey started, her voice smooth as a politician's. "Miss Lottie," she said, sipping her champagne. "We've been finalizing the wedding plans. It's going to be an exclusive affair at a resort in Santorini for Ben's career. We're keeping it intimate, just the right folks, Charles's business partners, my family's connections. We think you'd be more comfortable celebrating with us later, maybe a quiet dinner." I felt it, darling, like a knife twisting slow. My own boy's wedding, and I was being sent to the sidelines, told I didn't fit their shiny picture. I looked at Ben, hoping to see a flicker of the boy who'd carved his name on my sycamore. But he just nodded, his eyes on his plate. "It's for the best, Mom," he said, his voice low. "It's a big opportunity for me." I took a breath, my hand steady despite the ache in my chest, and set that envelope on the table, its edges worn from years of keeping. "Before we talk about what's best," I said, my voice calm as the lake at dawn, "there's something you'll need to know about Lakewood Retreat." Audrey's smile faltered, her flute pausing halfway to her lips. "Lakewood," she said, her brow furrowing. "What's that got to do with anything?" I slid the envelope toward her, my eyes never leaving hers. "Open it," I said, soft but sure. Ben leaned forward, his tie brushing the table. As Audrey pulled out the papers with fingers that trembled just a touch, she unfolded the first, a deed, dated 1978 in my maiden name, Charlotte Jameson, for the cabin at Lakewood Retreat. Then came the tax receipts, 40 years of them, paid with my teacher's salary and every dime I could scrape. Last were the photos, fresh from last summer, showing the cabin's cedar walls, its stone fireplace, the sycamore out front, all tended with love while they thought it was lost. "I don't understand," Ben said, his voice tight, flipping through the papers like he could make 'em lie. "Dad said the cabin was sold in the divorce. You're saying you've owned it all this time. That's impossible." Audrey's voice cracked, her flute slipping from her hand. It shattered on the marble floor, champagne splashing like tears. "Charles is buying it back. He showed us the listing. It's our wedding gift. I leaned back, my hands folded, and let the truth settle like dust after a storm. Charles lied. I said, each word carved with care. I kept that cabin, every board, every nail, for you, Ben. My daddy built it with his own hands, and I wasn't going to let it go, not to Charles, not to anyone. But if you don't see me see the woman who raised you, who kept this legacy alive, then it ain't yours to claim. Ben's face paled, his hands gripping the deed like it burned. Why didn't you tell me? Mom. All these years, why keep it a secret? I looked at him, seeing the boy who'd splashed in that lake, the man who'd chosen Charles's world over mine. I wanted you to have it when you were ready. Honey, I said, my voice soft but steady. But I had to protect it first, from your daddy's lawyers, from a world that don't value what's real. I thought you'd come back to me, but you didn't. And now, I've changed my will. That cabin's going to the Pine Ridge Environmental Conservancy to keep it whole, not torn down for some glass house. Audrey gasped, her hand covering her mouth, the broken glass at her feet forgotten. You can't do that, she said, her voice shaking. That's Ben's inheritance, it was. I said, rising from my chair, my pearl pendant catching the light. But inheritance ain't just land. Audrey, it's love, trust, family. You told me I don't fit your wedding. I'm telling you now, this cabin don't fit your plans. I'm giving you 1 year, Ben, to show me you understand what it means. If you don't, it's gone. I walked to the door, leaving the papers on the table, my heart pounding but sure. Ben called after me, his voice raw. Mom, wait. But I didn't stop. Honey, I stepped into the Fairhope night, the bay breeze cool on my face, and knew I'd done what my daddy taught me: never surrender what matters most. That moment's still with me, darling, like a hymn you can't forget. But how'd I get there? From a wedding I wasn't wanted at to a truth that shook their world. It's a long story, one that starts with love, stumbles through hurt, and finds its way to strength. To tell it right, I need to take you back to when Lakewood Retreat was new, when Ben was my whole world, and I thought a mother's love could hold a family together no matter what. It was 1978, honey, when Charles and I first came to Fairhope. We were young, broke, and so in love it felt like a song. My daddy, Bill Jameson, had built that cabin at Lakewood, its cedar walls strong, its Benson tow stretching into the lake like a hand reaching for forever. I'd stand there, pregnant with Ben, watching the sunset paint the water gold, thinking this was enough. Those were the days when love felt like it could weather any storm, when I believed Charles and I would raise our boy in that cabin, filling it with laughter and blackberry pie. I think about those days a lot, sitting here with the Alabama breeze stirring the magnolias. I remember Ben at 5, running to me with a fistful of daisies, his grin brighter than the lake at noon. How'd that boy grow into a man who let his fiancée tell me I wasn't wanted? How'd I go from the heart of our family to a stranger in their eyes? But this story ain't just about Ben, or Audrey, or even the hurt they caused. It's about me, about the woman I was, the woman I became, and the woman I'm still becoming. It's about the nights I cried alone, thinking I'd lost everything, and the mornings I woke up, hands in wood, carving something new. It's about Sophie, my grandbaby, whose letters kept me going. And it's about you, honey, because I know you've got your own hurts, your own moments when the world tried to dim your light. So, pull up a chair, darling, and let me pour you some tea. This story's got more turns than a back road in Alabama, and I want you along for the ride. It's about love, loss, and the kind of strength that blooms when you least expect it, like daisies pushing through the dirt to find the sun. I set my tea down, the glass clinking soft against the porch rail, and glance at that sycamore again. Its branches sway gentle, holding the names Ben carved long ago. And I know this is just the start. Ben may be up in Bayview Estates, wrestling with the truth I laid bare. But I've got my own light now, and it's burning bright. If you're with me so far, honey, I hope you'll stick around to hear the rest. This tale's got heart, grit, and a whole lot of love, and I'd be honored to share it with you. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Have you ever had to speak a truth that shook the room? Share your story with me, darling. I'm all ears. The morning light in Fairhope, Alabama, spills soft, honey, like a warm quilt draped over the world. I'm out here on my porch, this old rocking chair swaying gentle under me, a mug of jasmine tea steaming in my hands. The air's sweet with magnolia blossoms. And out in the yard, that big sycamore tree my daddy planted catches the sun, its leaves shining like polished silver. Across town, up in Bayview Estates, Ben and Audrey are building their sleek life, their house all glass and cold stone. But here on Magnolia Avenue, my red brick cottage holds me tight, its creaky floors whispering memories of love and loss. I'm Charlotte Hayes Lottie, to anyone who's shared my pecan pie, and, at 65, I've learned that love can build a home, but it don't always keep it whole. Today, darling, I want to take you back to when Lakewood Retreat was my haven, when Ben was my world, and I thought a mother's heart could hold a family together forever. It was 1978 when Charles and I came to Fairhope, young and full of dreams, with a baby on the way and a pocket full of hope. My daddy, Bill Jameson, had built a cabin at Lakewood Retreat, just off Fish River, its cedar walls strong, its stone fireplace glowing warm with his love. That place was my heart, honey, a sanctuary where the lake shimmered under pine trees, and the air smelled of blackberry pie baking in the kitchen. Charles was a lawyer then, all charm and ambition, his laugh filling the cabin like music. We'd sit on the Benson Toll, watching the sunset paint the water gold, and I'd rest my hand on my belly, feeling Ben kick, thinking this was what forever looked like. Ben came into the world that fall, a chubby-cheeked boy with his daddy's eyes and a giggle that could melt the grumpiest neighbor. I'd spend hours in the cabin's kitchen, kneading dough for cornbread, while he toddled on the pine floors, chasing sunbeams. I remember one summer in '80 when he was 2. He ran to me with a daisy clutched tight in his fist, hollering, "Mama." For you, I tucked it in my hair, kissed his sticky cheek, and felt like the luckiest woman in Alabama. Those nights, we'd gather on the porch, Charles strumming his guitar, me singing "Will the Circle Be Unbroken," while Ben chased fireflies under the sycamore. I thought, darling, this is what life's for: love, family, a place to call home. But life don't stay still, does it? By '82, Charles's law firm was taking off, bringing money but pulling him away. It's just one dinner. Lottie, he'd say, missing suppers, birthdays, even Ben's first soccer game. I'd smile, pack his lunch. But the distance grew, cold as a winter fog. Then I found out about Ellen, his junior partner, her perfume clinging to his suits. The divorce was a storm, bitter and public, his family's lawyers circling like hawks. The cabin's got to be sold, they said in mediation, their voices sharp with certainty. It's a marital asset, to be split. What they didn't know, what I kept locked tight, was that I'd seen it coming. Months before filing, I'd worked with my college friend Maggie Coleman, an estate lawyer, to move the cabin into a trust under my maiden name. The paperwork showed it sold to cover debts, but it was safe, beyond Charles's reach. This ain't deceit, Lottie, Maggie said, her eyes fierce. It's protecting what's yours. Charles believed it was gone, offering fake sympathy. Sorry about the cabin. Lottie, some developer will probably tear it down. I nodded, silent. knowing sometimes quiet keeps what matters most. The years after were lean, honey. I moved Ben to a small apartment on Satsuma Street, went back to teaching high school English, grading papers till midnight to make ends meet. Money was tight, but I stretched it, skipping new dresses to pay the cabin's taxes, driving an old Chevy to save for its upkeep. Every summer, while Ben visited Charles in Europe, I'd spend 2 weeks at Lakewood, sanding the porch, patching the roof, keeping my daddy's dream alive. I'd sit on that Benson tow, reading Robert Frost, hoping one day Ben would bring his own kids there, splashing in the lake like he did. "Mom, why don't we go to the lake anymore?" Ben asked once, maybe 10. His eyes big with memory. I swallowed hard, the half-truth bitter. "It's gone, sweetheart," I said, "but we'll make new memories." I told myself I'd reveal the cabin when he was older, when he could understand why I'd fought to keep it. But as he grew, honey, he drifted, pulling closer to Charles's world. The summer trips turned to semesters abroad, then a finance degree paid for by Charles's connections. Our calls got shorter, his visits rarer. When he came to my cottage, he'd glance around, his eyes holding pity. "You could do better, Mom," he said after landing his first big job. "I know folks who could boost your pension." I smiled, thanking him, but the irony stung. My boy, offering financial advice, didn't know I was keeping a cabin worth more than his salary, paid for with years of quiet grit. I watched him change, darling, from the curious kid who'd collected lake pebbles to a polished man measuring success by bank accounts and status. Then came Audrey, a mobile girl with hair like spun gold and a smile that dazzled everyone but me. She was polite, calling me Miss Lottie, bringing store-bought tarts to Sunday suppers, but her eyes sized up my cottage like it was a thrift shop. "This place is so cozy," she'd say, her voice sweet but sharp, glancing at my quilted table runner. I'd nod, pour her tea, but I felt it a chill, like a door closing slow. When they got engaged, I gave him my blessing and a quilt I'd stitched, each square a piece of our story, Ben's baby blanket, my daddy's shirt, my mama's apron. I hoped it'd hold them through life's storms. Their daughter, Sophie, came along from Ben's earlier relationship. And oh, honey, she was my light, 8 years old, with Ben's eyes and a laugh like bells. She'd curl up in my lap, asking for stories about the lake. But as Ben and Audrey climbed their ladder, they pulled away. Audrey'd sit in my kitchen, tapping her phone, tossing out comments that cut deep. "All this quilting, Miss Lottie," she'd say, "must take so much time at your age." I'd offer her more pie, but her words stuck, like burrs on a sweater. I should have seen the storm brewing. But love blinds you. Don't it? I thought Ben was just busy, chasing deals, building a life I'd helped him dream of. I didn't know Charles was whispering in his ear, spinning tales about reclaiming the cabin as a wedding gift. I didn't know until that Tuesday in April, 3 weeks before the wedding. When everything broke open, I was in the kitchen, planning a quilt for Sophie Daisy's, her favourite when the phone rang. Audrey's name lit up the screen, and my heart lifted, hoping she was calling to talk plans. "Hello, darling," I said, wiping flour from my hands. "Miss Lottie," Audrey said, her voice crisp as a winter morning. "I wanted to talk about the wedding. Can we meet at Riverside Cafe tomorrow noon?" I agreed, thinking maybe she'd softened, but a knot tightened in my chest. The next day, at the cafe, she sat across from me, her latte steam rising like a veil. "We're finalizing the guest list," she said, not meeting my eyes, with Charles bringing his partners and my family's connections. "It's grown exclusive. We're worried you'd feel out of place among such high-profile folks." I gripped my tea, the warmth no match for the cold spreading inside me. "Out of place," I said, my voice steady despite the hurt. "It's my boy's wedding. Audrey, I raised him." She offered a tight smile. Of course, but it's for Ben's career. Charles thinks it'd be awkward, given the divorce. We're planning a private dinner later, just us. Her words were polished, but the truth was raw. I was being uninvited, erased from my son's biggest day. And, Ben, I asked, my voice shaken now, does he think this, too? She hesitated. Just a beat. He understands the complexities, she said, smooth as silk. It's what's best for everyone. I left the cafe, honey, the bay glistening under the noon sun. But my heart felt like it had drowned. I drove home, sat on this porch, staring at that sycamore, its branches heavy with Ben's name, carved when he was 9. I'd given him everything: my youth, my dreams, my daddy's cabin, and now I was an outsider in his world. But as the stars came out, I heard Daddy's voice, soft as a hymn. Ownership is truth. Lottie. And I knew, deep down, this wasn't the end. I'd fight for my place, not with anger, but with the truth I'd kept for 40 years. How'd I get from that broken moment to a dining room where I laid my truth bare? It's a story of hurt, hope, and a strength I didn't know I had. To tell it right, I need to take you back further, to when Ben was my shadow, when Lakewood was our haven. And I thought love could weather any storm. I was wrong about that, darling. But what I found instead is a light that burns brighter than any pain. I set my mug down, the porcelain clinking and soft against the porch rail, and look out at that sycamore again. Its leaves rustle, holding the names Ben carved long ago, and I know the road ahead ain't easy. Ben's up in Bayview Estates, wrestling with the truth I spoke, but I've got my own path now, paved with pecan pie and courage. If you're still with me, honey, I hope you'll stay for the rest of this tale. It's got heart, hurt, and a whole lot of hope, and I'd love to share it with you. Hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. Has someone ever tried to push you out of their world? How'd you find your light? I'm listening, darling. The Dothan, Alabama, mornings come gentle, honey, like a soft hymn drifting through the pines. I'm out here on my porch, this old rocking chair creaking under me. A mug of jasmine tea warm in my hands. The air's crisp, carrying the sweet scent of magnolia. And out in the yard, that big sycamore tree my daddy planted sways soft, its leaves catching the first light like they're holding on to hope. Across town, up in Bayview Estates, Ben and Audrey are planning their fancy wedding, the one I ain't invited to. But here on Magnolia Avenue, my red brick cottage is quiet, its walls wrapping me in memories as I mend a heart torn to pieces. I'm Charlotte Hayes Lottie to anyone who's tasted my pecan pie and at 65. I've learned that hurt can break you, but it can also spark a fire. Today, darling, I want to tell you about the day I thought I'd lost my place and the moment I decided to take it back. It was that Tuesday in April, 3 weeks before Ben's wedding, when Audrey's words hit me like a cold wave off Mobile Bay. I'd met her at the Riverside Cafe, hoping for a softening in her. But she sat there, all polished and poised, her latte steaming between us. "Miss Lottie," she said, her voice sharp as a polished blade, "we're keeping the wedding exclusive. For Ben's career, with Charles's partners and my family's connections, it's a high-profile event. We're worried you'd feel out of place." She paused, offering a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're planning a private dinner later, just us, to celebrate." I sat there, honey, my hands folded tight around my tea, feeling like the ground had crumbled beneath me. Out of place, I'd raised Ben, worked nights grading papers to pay his school fees, sold my mama's ring to keep food on the table. I'd kept our family's cabin at Lakewood Retreat alive for 40 years, paying taxes with every dime I could scrape, while they thought it was lost in the divorce. And now, I was being told I didn't belong at my own boy's wedding. I looked into Audrey's eyes, searching for a crack in her resolve, but found none. "And Ben," I asked, my voice shaking despite myself. "Does he think this too?" Her hesitation was brief, but it cut deep. "He understands the complexities," she said, smooth as silk. "It's what's best for everyone." I drove home, the bay glistening under the noon sun, but my heart felt like it had drowned in its depths. I sank into a chair in my kitchen, the one with the sycamore table my daddy built, and let the tears come. They weren't loud, darling, just quiet, like rain on a tin roof. But they carried 65 years of love and loss. I thought of Sophie, my grandbaby, wondering if she'd miss my stories, my hugs. I thought of Ben, letting Audrey speak for him, and I wondered where I'd gone wrong. Had I loved him too much, made him think I'd always be here, no matter how he hurt me? The sycamore outside stood tall, its branches heavy with his name, carved when he was 9, and I felt a grief so deep it didn't have a name. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the cottage, touching the things that held my life, my daddy's old fishing rod by the door, the quilt my mama stitched for my wedding, the photos on the mantel. There was one from 80 Ben at 6, splashing in the lake at Lakewood, his grin wide as the horizon. "Don't leave me." "Mama," he'd said after Charles left, and I'd promised I wouldn't. I'd kept that promise, teaching English till my eyes blurred, skipping new shoes to pay the cabin's taxes, driving to Lakewood every summer to sand the porch, patch the roof, keep my daddy's dream alive, and now, at 65, I was here, alone, told I was too plain for my son's big day. The days that followed were heavy, like walking through a fog. I went through my routine morning walks down Magnolia Avenue, reading to kids at Fairhope Library, stitching quilts with the ladies at First Baptist, but it felt hollow. Audrey's words echoed, and worse. She'd spread a rumor through the church group that I'd chosen to rest this year, too frail for a big event. Mrs. Evelyn Parker, my neighbor with the rose garden, stopped me one morning. Her eyes kind but clouded. "Lottie, you sure you're okay sitting in out Ben's wedding?" she asked, leaning on her cane. "Audrey said you needed a break." I forced a smile, my heart twisting like a wrung-out rag. "I'm fine, Evelyn," I said, "but I ain't resting. I'm just figuring things out." She nodded, but I saw the doubt, and it stung. "Honey," knowing Audrey's lie had taken root, I felt like a stranger in Fairhope, the town where I'd taught generations, baked for church suppers, raised my boy, even the sycamore, with Ben's name etched deep, seemed to whisper I'd lost my place. I might have stayed in that darkness, darling, if not for a moment. 3 days later, I was in my quilting shed, my hands in thread, stitching a daisy pattern for Sophie. When the radio played "Will the Circle Be Unbroken?", the hymn my daddy loved, I stopped, the needle still, and remembered 95, when I'd faced a lean year after a flood hit Lakewood. I'd worked extra hours, sewn dresses for neighbors, to keep the cabin's taxes paid, all while Ben was off with Charles. Unaware, my daddy's voice came back, strong as ever. "Ownership is truth. Lottie, never surrender what matters." I'd fought then, for him, for Ben, for me, and standing there, with that hymn filling the shed, I knew I could fight again. I wiped my hands, walked to the kitchen, and pulled out a notebook. I wasn't done, honey. I'd tell Ben and Audrey the truth about Lakewood Retreat. Not to hurt him, but to show him who I was. I'd lay out the deed, the tax receipts, the photos, and let the cabin speak for itself, and I'd change my will, leaving that cabin to folks who'd keep it whole, not tear it down for some modern lake house. I called Maggie Coleman, my old friend and lawyer, her voice crackling with fire when I told her what Audrey'd done. Audrey said what Maggie said, her tone sharp as a switch. Honey, that cabin's your trump card. Let's play it right. I'm scared. Maggie, I admitted, twisting the phone cord. What if Ben hates me for this? He'll see you, she said, firm as gospel. You're stronger than that sycamore. Lottie, always have been. I hung up, my heart pounding, and started gathering what I'd need my daddy's deed, yellowed but true, 40 years of tax receipts, each one a testament to my grit, photos from last summer, showing the cabin's cedar walls, its stone fireplace, the sycamore out front. I'd take him to Ben and Audrey's dinner, lay him on that glass table, and let the truth shine. But I wanted to give him something else, a piece of my heart. I went to my shed, pulled out a piece of oak, and started carving a box, pressing daisy patterns into the lid, each petal a promise I was still here. It'd be my wedding gift, not to beg a seat, but to remind him of the love that built our family. The rumor from Audrey grew thorns, though. Mrs. Thompson, another neighbor, texted, asking if I was sick. I wanted to scream, to tell Fairhope Audrey'd lied. But I took a breath, looked at that sycamore, and typed back, I'm well, darling. And I'm hosting a picnic at Lakewood soon. Come see the truth for yourself. I didn't know if she'd come, but I wasn't going to let Audrey's shadow dim my light. I kept working, stitching quilts, reading Frost, planning a picnic to show Fairhope the cabin I'd kept alive. I'd invite the church group, Evelyn, even folks who'd doubted me, and let my daddy's dream speak. I think about that notebook now, sitting here with the Dothan sun warm in my face. Its pages hold the plans, the papers, the heart that carried me to that dining room where I spoke my truth. I don't know what Ben's thinking today, or if Audrey's still spinning her tales, but I know this: I'm not the woman I was that Tuesday, crying in my kitchen, thinking I'd lost everything. I'm Lottie Hayes, and I'm building something new on Daisy. One story, one truth at a time. If you're still with me, honey, I hope you're feeling that spark, the one that says you can rise, even when the world tries to push you down. Stick around for the next part, because it's about to get brighter. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Have you ever had to fight to be seen? Share your light with me, darling. I'm all ears. The afternoon light in Fairhope, Alabama, glows golden, honey, like the last sip of summer before fall creeps in. I'm on my porch, this old rocking chair swaying soft under me, a glass of jasmine tea cool against my palm. The air's heavy with magnolia sweetness, and out in the yard, that big sycamore tree my daddy planted rustles gentle, its leaves dancing in the breeze like they're whispering courage. Across town, up in Bayview Estates, Ben and Audrey are planning their highfalutin wedding. But I've got plans of my own, ones that'll shine brighter than their crystal flutes. I'm Charlotte Hayes Lottie to anyone who's tasted my pecan pie, and at 65, I've learned that building something true takes grit, love, and a heart that won't quit. Today, darling, I want to tell you how I got ready to lay my truth bare. Facing troubles that tested me, with friends who held me up when I was shaken. After Audrey's words cut me deep at the Riverside Cafe, telling me I wasn't wanted at Ben's wedding, I decided I'd show him the cabin at Lakewood Retreat was still mine. That night, sitting by the sycamore, I heard my daddy's voice, ownership is truth. Lottie, I wasn't going to let Audrey's coldness or Ben's silence erase me. I'd tell him the cabin story at their fancy dinner, and I'd plan a picnic to show Fairhope the legacy I'd kept alive for 40 years. But truth ain't just speaking. Honey, it's preparing. And the road to that moment was full of thorns, each one pricing my resolve. I started the next morning, pulling out my daddy's old deed box, its cedar lid worn smooth from years of care. Inside were the papers I'd need the 1978 deed in my maiden name. Charlotte Evans, tax receipts from every year since, paid with my teacher's salary, photos from last summer, showing the cabin's cedar walls, its stone fireplace, the sycamore out front. I spread 'em on the kitchen table, the one my daddy built, and felt a fire kindling. I'd take these to Ben and Audrey's dinner, lay 'em on their glass table, and let the truth speak. But I wanted to give 'em something else, a piece of my heart. I went to my quilting shed, pulled out a slab of oak, and started carving a box, pressing daisy patterns into the lid, each petal a promise for Sophie, my grandbaby. It'd be my wedding gift, not to beg a seat, but to remind him of the love that built our family. I wasn't stopping there, honey. I'd host a picnic at Lakewood, inviting the Fairhope First Baptist group, my neighbour Evelyn Parker, even folks who'd doubted me after Audrey's rumour. I'd show him the cabin, let its cedar walls and lake breeze tell my story. I scribbled a plan, borrow tables from the church, bake cornbread and pecan pie, ask Maggie Coleman to help with legal papers in case Charles stirred trouble. But planning ain't doing. And the troubles piled up quick, testing me like a storm on the bay. Audrey's rumour was the first thorn. She'd told the church group I'd chosen to rest for the wedding, too frail for a big event. And it spread like wildfire. Mrs. Thompson, down the street, stopped by with a casserole, her eyes soft with pity. "Lottie, you sure you're up for the wedding fuss?" she asked, setting the dish on my counter. "Audrey said you're taking it easy." I gripped the counter, my smile tight as a drum. "I'm hosting a picnic at Lakewood, Mrs. Thompson," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Come see the truth for yourself." She blinked, surprised, but nodded. "I'll think on it," she said, and I saw a flicker of doubt lift. But others weren't so easy. 2 neighbours declined my picnic invite, citing plans, and I wondered if Audrey's lie had poisoned the well. I wanted to march to Bayview Estates and set her straight, but I took a breath, looked at that sycamore, and kept going. I wasn't fighting her shadow, I was building my light. Money was another thorn. My pension was stretched thin, and keeping Lakewood meant skipping new curtains for my cottage, driving my old Chevy till it groaned. The picnic needed food, tables, gas to haul everything to the lake. I dipped into my savings, the last of my daddy's insurance, and got greens from the community garden collards, okra, a few late tomatoes to save costs. I borrowed 6 folding tables from First Baptist, Pastor Clara Evans smiling as she handed me the key. "You're doing something special, Lottie," she said, her voice warm as a Sunday sermon. "This town needs your heart." I hugged her, feeling a spark, but the work wasn't done. I spent a day cleaning the cabin, dusting the fireplace, sweeping the porch, my knees aching from arthritis, but I hummed Amazing Grace to keep my spirits high. The cabin itself threw the biggest trouble. A storm had hit Lakewood, loosening boards on the Benson Tow. I drove out with my daddy's old toolbox, my hands shaking as I hammered nails. The wood splintered, but stubborn. Halfway through, my arthritis flared, and I sat on the dock, tears pricking. I thought of quitting. Honey, wondering if I was fooling myself, trying to hold on to a past Ben didn't want. But Maggie stopped by, her cornbread in hand, and saw me sitting there, staring at the lake. "What's this?" "Lottie," she asked, kneeling beside me. Her eyes fierce. "A broken dream," I said, my voice thick. "Maybe I'm wrong to fight for it." Maggie took my hand, her grip strong. "You're not broken, honey. You're building. This dock, this cabin, this picnic. It's you, showing the world who you are. Don't you dare stop." She helped me hammer the last nails, her laughter easing my ache, and I knew she was right. I went back to the shed, finished that daisy box, each carve a step toward healing. Maggie wasn't the only one lifting me. Pastor Clara called, her voice bright. "Lottie, I want you to speak at our Elder Justice meeting Sunday," she said. "Folks need to hear your story, how you're standing tall." I was nervous, but I said yes, knowing it was a chance to set Audrey's rumor straight. Evelyn Parker, feeling guilty for doubting me, promised to bring her rose jam to the picnic. I see you now, Lottie, she said, her eyes wet. I'm sorry I listened to Audrey. Thomas Reed, the caretaker at Lakewood, stopped by with old receipts, proving I'd kept the cabin up for decades. You're a force. Miss Lottie, he said, grinning. Let me know how I can help. Each friend was a stitch, mending my torn heart, but the doubt still crept in. What if Ben turned away when I told him the truth? What if the picnic flopped, leaving me alone with my daddy's dream? I woke some nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was chasing a ghost. Then, a week before the dinner, a letter came from Sophie, her childish scrawl like a lifeline. Grandma, it read, why aren't you coming to Daddy's wedding? Mommy said you're tired. But I miss your stories about the lake. My heart squeezed. Knowing Audrey'd spun her lie to my grandbaby, too, I sat at the sycamore table, pen in hand, and wrote back, careful but true. I'm not tired, sweetheart, I said. Your folks think I don't fit their big day, but I'm planning a picnic at the lake, where I used to take your daddy. I'd love to tell you those stories there. You're always in my heart. Honey, I sealed it, hoping my words would reach her. Maybe even nudge Ben to think twice. That letter was a seed, darling, planted in soft soil, and it gave me the push to keep going. I threw myself into the preparations, baking cornbread, testing a new blackberry jam, polishing Mama's silver for the picnic. I hung a wreath of daisies on the cabin door, a nod to the sycamore that held our names. But trouble struck again when my oven quit mid-bake, ruining a batch of rolls. I stared at the mess, my heart sinking. But Maggie was there, laughing. Honey, we'll bake at my place, she said, grabbing a spatula, add some honey, and nobody'll know. We did, and they were better than the first, golden and sweet, like the friendship that saved 'em. Charles was the last thorn, showing up at my cottage unannounced, his suit as slick as his smile. Lottie, he said, leaning against my porch rail. I hear you're stirring trouble about the cabin. Give it to me, and I'll make sure Ben invites you to the wedding. I crossed my arms, the breeze cool on my face. You think you can buy my place in my boy's life, I said, my voice steady. That cabin's my daddy's, love, not your bargaining in-yard chip. He smirked, unfazed. You're naive. Lottie, Ben's future's with me, not some old shack. That shack outlasted you. Charles, I said, turning away, and so will I. He left, but not before hinting at lawyers, a shadow I knew I'd face. Maggie was ready, her legal papers tight, but the threat hung heavy. By the day before the dinner, my cottage was a flurry, papers packed, daisy box finished, picnic plan set. I stood in the kitchen, hands on my hips, and felt my daddy's smile. You're doing it, Lottie, he'd say. But as I looked at that empty table, I wondered if Ben would see me, if Sophie would hold my hand, if this truth would be enough to mend what was broken. Sitting here now, with the Fairhope dusk settling soft, I think of that daisy box, waiting to hold a piece of my heart. I don't know what Ben's thinking in Bayview Estates, or if Audrey's lies still linger, but I know this, I'm not the woman I was, crying in my kitchen, thinking I'd lost my place. I'm Lottie Hayes, and I'm setting a table for truth, one daisy, one friend, one hope at a time. If you're still with me, honey, I hope you're feeling that fire, the one that burns, even when the world tries to snuff it out. Stay for the next part, because it's where the truth comes home. Hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. Have you ever had to push through doubt to stand tall? Share your spark with me, darling. I'm all ears. The twilight in Fairhope, Alabama, settles soft, honey, like a warm blanket tucked around your shoulders. I'm on my porch, this old rocking chair creaking under me, a glass of jasmine tea cool in my hand. The air's sweet with magnolia, and out in the yard, That big sycamore tree my daddy planted glows under the stars. Its leaves whisper in peace. Across town, up in Bayview Estates, Ben's house is quiet now, but here on Magnolia Avenue, my red brick cottage hums with the memory of a day that changed everything. I'm Charlotte Hayes Lottie to anyone who's tasted my pecan pie and at 65. I've learned that a heart can break and still build something beautiful. Tonight, darling, I want to take you back to that picnic at Lakewood Retreat, to the moment my boy walked back into my life and the wedding that brought us home. You've heard me talk about that night in Ben and Audrey's glass house, how I laid out the truth about the cabin and watched Audrey's champagne flute shatter. Let's go back, honey, to the days that followed, when Fairhope gathered at Lakewood, and a wedding bloomed where hurt once stood. It was a time of laughter, tears, and a reckoning I didn't see coming. But oh, it was worth every step of the journey. The picnic at Lakewood Retreat was a Saturday in May, the lake sparkling under a sky blue as my mama's Sunday dress. I'd spent days preparing, my kitchen a whirl of cornbread, collards, and pecan pie, the air thick with sugar and sage. The tables, borrowed from First Baptist, stood under the sycamore. Draped with quilts, I'd stitched daisies and magnolias in every shade of Alabama summer. Evelyn Parker's rose jam glowed in jars. Maggie Coleman's lemonade sparkled in pitchers. And Pastor Clara Evans brought her famous fried okra, crispy as a summer breeze. The cabin's cedar walls gleamed, its stone fireplace quiet but proud, and the Benson tow stretched into the lake, mirroring the clouds. Fairhope came out in droves, church folks, neighbors, even Mrs. Thompson, who'd doubted me after Audrey's rumor. They milled about, laughing, their voices rising like a hymn. I stood by the sycamore, my silk skirt fluttering in the breeze, my daddy's pearl pendant warm against my skin. My hands trembled, but I raised a mason jar of lemonade, my voice steady as the lake. Friends, I said, looking at each face, Evelyn's kind eyes, Maggie's fierce grin, Clara's quiet nod, y'all are my heart today. This cabin's my daddy's dream, built with love and kept through 40 years of quiet work. Some folks said I'd let it go, but here it stands, and here I stand, too. Thank you for seeing me. My voice caught, tears pricking. But I smiled through 'em. Maggie squeezed my arm, her eyes shiny. Thomas Reed, Lakewood's caretaker, clapped loudest, his weathered hands telling their own story. The crowd cheered, jars raised, and I felt it, darling a joy so deep it healed the cracks Audrey's lie had left. The picnic hummed with life, folks sharing stories over plates piled high. Evelyn told of her mama's rose garden. Clara spoke of faith that holds through storms, and I shared a tale of Ben at 6, splashing in the lake, making everyone laugh. I'd set out my daisy-carved box, its oak lid open to show photos of the cabin through the years my daddy building it. Ben playing on the dock, me sanding the porch last summer. Fairhope saw the truth, honey, and Audrey's rumor withered like weeds in the sun. But the day wasn't done surprising me. As we cleared the tables, a car rolled up the gravel path, its tires crunching soft. I turned, my heart skipping, and saw Sophie, my grandbaby, bounding out, her pigtails flying. Grandma, she hollered, running into my arms, her sketchbook clutched tight. I hugged her fierce, breathing in her strawberry shampoo, then looked up to see Ben step out, his suit traded for a cotton shirt, his eyes wary but soft. Ben, I said, my voice steady, setting La Sophie down. This is a surprise. He shifted, hands in his pockets. Sophie wanted to come, he said, his voice low. She's been talking about your letters, the lake stories. I hope it's okay. I leaned against the sycamore, its bark cool under my hand. This is my home. Ben, I said, each word deliberate. You're welcome if you're here to share it, not just watch. I held his gaze, seeing the boy who'd carved his name here, the man who'd let Audrey push me out. He nodded, a flicker of shame in his eyes, and I gestured toward the picnic. Come on in, I said, my heart racing but sure. We walked to the tables, the crowd quieting as they took in my son. Y'all, I said, keeping my tone light. This is my boy, Ben, and my grandbaby, Sophie. They're here to join us. Maggie clapped, waving him over, while Evelyn pulled up chairs. Sophie's eyes lit up at the pecan pie, its crust golden under the sunlight. Did you make this? Grandma, she asked, her voice bright with wonder. Every bite, I said, cutting her a slice, just like I taught your daddy. She grinned, and I saw the girl who'd curled up in my lap, asking for lake tales. Ben sat quiet, his plate untouched, watching the crowd like he was seeing me anew. I felt a pang, wanting to hug him, but I held back. This was my day, my truth, and he'd have to meet me halfway. The picnic wound down, folks hugging me goodbye, promising to come back. But Ben lingered, Sophie playing by the dock, and I knew we needed to talk. I nodded toward the Benson Tow, and we walked there. The lake lapping soft under our feet. The sunset painted the water gold, and I leaned against a post, my hands clasped. Why'd you come, Ben? I asked, my voice low but firm. Was it just Sophie, or is there something you need to say? He rubbed his neck, staring at the water. I messed up. Mum, he said, his voice rough. I let Audrey decide. Thought it'd help my career. I didn't mean to hurt you. I took a breath, the hurt rising like a tide. You didn't mean to, but you did. I said, meeting his eyes. You let her tell me I was nothing, that my stories, our family, didn't matter. I raised you, Ben, gave you everything. And you stood silent. His face crumpled, tears glistening. I was scared, he said, his voice breaking, the firms on my back, debts piling up. Dad said we needed to impress his partners, that you... He stopped, shaking his head. I'm sorry, Mom, I should have fought for you. I looked at him, seeing the boy who'd splashed here, the man who'd lost his way. I forgive you, Ben, I said, my voice soft but sure. Not because it's easy, but because holding anger hurts me more. But forgiveness ain't trust. You've got to earn your place in this cabin, son. And that starts with seeing me. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I want to try, he said, his voice small. I miss you. Mom, I miss this. He gestured at the lake, the cabin, the sycamore. Then let's start slow, I said, touching his arm. Come back Sunday. Bring Sophie. We'll see where it goes. He smiled, faint but real, and I felt a spark of hope, like a daisy pushing through the dirt. The next week, Audrey called, her voice shakier than I'd ever heard. Miss Lottie, she said. I was wrong. I thought I was protecting Ben's future. But I hurt you. Can we talk? We met at my cottage, and she sat at my sycamore table, no makeup. Her eyes red. I grew up thinking appearances were everything. She said, her voice raw, but seeing those photos, your cabin, I want to be different. We're cancelling Santorini. We want to marry at Lakewood, if you'll let us. I studied her, seeing a woman trying to grow. Words are easy. Audrey, I said, my voice calm. Show me you mean it, and we'll talk. She nodded, and I saw a flicker of resolve. Maybe the start of something true. The wedding came in September, under a sky soft as cotton. Lakewood glowed. The sycamore draped with lanterns, tables set with my quilts and Evelyn's roses. Ben and Audrey stood by the lake, their vows simple but real. Speaking of love that lasts, not status that fades, I stood at the front, my daisy box in their hands, holding photos of our family Ben, Sophie, my daddy. This is my heart, I said to the crowd, my voice steady. Thank you for sharing it. Charles came, quiet in the back, his face unreadable. But he nodded once, a concession I didn't need. That day wasn't the end. Honey, it was a beginning. A seed planted in love's good soil. Ben and I are learning. Sophie's my light, and Fairhope's my home. One more part to this story, and it's about peace, legacy, and a love that grows. If you're still with me, darling, I hope you're feeling that light, the one that shines when you stand true. Stay for the last part, because it's where the heart blooms. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. When did you face someone who hurt you? How'd you find your peace? I'm listening, honey. The evening in Fairhope, Alabama, falls like a soft hymn. Honey, the sky a deep indigo where stars twinkle like fireflies over Mobile Bay. I'm out here on my porch, this old rocking chair swaying gentle under me. A glass of jasmine tea resting on the armrest, its steam curling into the night. The air's thick with magnolia sweetness. And out in the yard, that big sycamore tree my daddy planted stands tall, its leaves rustling like they're whispering thanks. Across town, up in Bayview Estates, Ben and Audrey are settling into their new life, but here on Magnolia Avenue, my red brick cottage glows with a peace I've fought hard to claim. I'm Charlotte Hayes Lottie, to anyone who's tasted my pecan pie and at 65. I've learned that a heart can mend, grow, and leave something beautiful behind. Tonight, darling, I want to tell you how that picnic and wedding at Lakewood Retreat led me to a new beginning. A legacy that's more than cedar and stone, and a love that'll outlast me. It's been 6 months since that September wedding at Lakewood. When Ben and Audrey stood by the lake, their vows woven with truth instead of show. That day was a turning point, honey. But it wasn't the end. It was a seed, planted in good soil, and the months since have shown me what can bloom when you tend it with care. I'd built a truth, not just for one day, but for a life I hadn't dared dream of, a life where I was enough. Not because of who I'd been to Ben or my daddy, but because of who I am. Right here, right now. This is the story of how I found peace, left a mark, and learned that at 65, my heart's still a garden, bursting with daisies. My cottage ain't quiet no more. Darling, Sophie's here most weekends, her sneakers by the door, her laughter filling the kitchen like a summer breeze. She's 8, all pigtails and big dreams, with Ben's eyes and a heart that sees me clear. We've got a rhythm now, a dance of love that's simple but true. Mornings, we tend the garden, planting daisies and okra under that sycamore. The dirt cool under our fingers. Evenings, we bake cornbread with extra butter, blackberry pie from my daddy's recipe, and that ginger snap cheesecake Sophie swears is magic. I teach her old hymns, like Sweet By and By, and she hums along, her voice high and sweet. It's not the family I pictured years ago, but it's mine. Honey, and it's sweeter than I ever knew. One Saturday, as we rolled dough for biscuits, Sophie looked up, flour dust in her nose. "Grandma," she said, her voice soft, "why didn't you come to Daddy's first wedding?" "Mommy said you were too busy, but that ain't true, is it?" I set the rolling pin down, wiping my hands on my apron, and took a breath. "No, honey," I said, meat in her eyes. "Your mama thought I didn't fit their fancy plans, that my stories were too old." It hurt, but it pushed me to show him the cabin at Lakewood, where your daddy grew up. That's why we had the wedding there, with you and me sharing pie. Sophie nodded, her face serious. "I like your stories," she said, almost a whisper. "They make me feel like I'm home." I pulled her close, tears pricking my eyes. "You are, sweetheart," I said, "right here, with me, always." That moment, darling, was worth every tear I'd shed, every doubt I'd fought. Sophie, overhearing us need. tugged my sleeve. I drew you, Grandma, by the lake, she said, handed me a sketch me under the sycamore, silver hair glowing, the cabin warm behind. I hung it above the mantel, right next to my daisy-carved box, a testament to the love that holds us now. Ben's been trying too, in his quiet way. He comes for Sunday suppers, bringing Sophie, sitting at my sycamore table with a softness I ain't seen since he was a boy. He don't talk much, but he listens. His eyes warm when I tell tales of my daddy or Sophie's baby days. One night, as we cleared plates, he touched my arm. "Mum," he said, his voice low. "I'm sorry. I let Audrey and Dad push you out. I'm trying to make it right." I looked at him, seeing the boy who'd carved his name on that tree, the man finding his way back. "I see you trying." "Ben," I said, my voice steady. "But love ain't just showing up. It's choosing me, every day. We'll get there, son. But it's gonna take time." He nodded, his jaw tight, and I saw a spark of the man he could be. "It ain't perfect, honey, but it's a start, and I'm holding the door open, just wide enough for hope. Audrey's changing too, though it's a slower road. After the wedding, she joined my quilting group at First Baptist, her hands clumsy with a needle but earnest. She don't talk much, but one day, as we stitched, she looked up. "Miss Lottie," she said, her voice shaky. "I grew up thinking everything had to look perfect. You showed me what real looks like." "Thank you," I nodded, not trusting her fully yet, but seeing a woman trying to grow. "Keep stitching, Audrey," I said, passing her a spool. "It's a start." "She's still learning, darling." But I leave the gate unlatched, hoping she'll find her way. This cottage is more than my home. Now it's a haven for Fairhope. My friends are family, dropping by with stories and warmth. Maggie brings her cornbread, still crispy as ever, and we laugh about our aches like they're old friends. Evelyn's roses grace my table, even in winter. Her visit's a reminder of forgiveness. Clara reads scripture on Sundays, her voice carrying hope like a prayer. Thomas Reed stops by with lake tales, his grin as wide as the bay. We plant seeds in the community garden, their laughter as nourishing as the soil. This, honey, is what I didn't know I needed, a community that sees me. Not as Ben's mama or Charles's ex, but as Lottie, whole and enough. I've given back too. I took $15,000 from my savings, the last of my daddy's insurance, and started the Hayes Legacy Fund at the community center, helping older women like me. Folks pushed aside, told they don't matter. It pays for groceries, legal aid, even small joys like a new quilt or a bus pass to visit grandkids. Clara announced it at First Baptist, her voice ringing clear. "Lottie Hayes has given us a gift," she said, "but it's for all of us, to keep our roots strong." The applause was a wave, washing over me, and I stood there, tears streaming, knowing I'd done something that had lived beyond me. Sophie helped me hand out the first check, her eyes wide. "Why not name it after you?" "Grandma," she asked, holding the envelope. "Because it ain't about me, honey," I said, smiling. "It's about the women who need it, knowing someone sees them." She nodded, and I saw a spark in her, a girl learning that love is given without expecting glory. Sophie's leaving her mark, too. She wrote a school essay about the Lakewood wedding, about my daisy box and the stories I tell. "My grandma's the strongest lady I know," she wrote, and the Fairhope Times printed it, spreading the word about keeping elders close. I cried when I read it. Honey, not for pain, but for pride. Sophie's my legacy. A girl who'll carry my stories forward. Maybe tell them to her own kids someday. I changed my will, with Maggie's help, to reflect this new chapter. The cottage goes to Sophie when she's 21, with a trust for her schooling. The cabin stays mine for now, but if Ben don't earn it in a year, it'll go to the conservancy. Preserved as my daddy built it, the rest my pension. What's left of my savings feeds the Hayes Legacy Fund. Ben gets nothing yet. and Maggie told him, her voice firm. Your mama's made her choice, she said. And I felt no guilt, only truth. Last month, I held a quilt show at First Baptist, displaying my daisy box, quilts, and photos of Lakewood. I stood before a crowd, mostly women my age, and spoke from the heart. They'll call you old. Y'all, I said, my voice ringing. But you're sycamores, rooted deep, your heart's a garden, and it'll bloom, no matter the season. They clapped, some cried, one woman hugging me tight, whispering, You reminded me I'm still here, that, darling, was my victory, not vengeance, but a light for others to follow. I think back to 70 when my daddy and I sat by Lakewood's lake, dreaming of a family, a home, a legacy. We didn't know the storms we'd face Charles's betrayal, Ben's distance, Audrey's cold words, but we built something that endures. This cottage, this garden, this grandbaby, this community, they're my dream, come true in ways I never imagined. Ben's trying, and I'm watching, but I don't need him to complete me. I'm Lottie Hayes, and I'm whole, blooming like daisies in spring. Sitting here now, with the Fairhope stars bright above, I feel my daddy's hand on mine. His voice soft, You did it, Lottie. This is my peace, honey. Not in what I lost, but in what I've grown. I hope you're carrying this story with you, darling. That spark of knowing you're enough, no matter what the world says. This is the end of my tale, but I'd love to hear yours. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What's a time you found your light? Even in the dark, share it with me. Honey, I'm listening, and I'm rooting for you, just like those daisies in my garden.